Greetings out there in YouTube land. This is Morris, man. And as always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. I hope everyone had a pleasant and safe 4th of July holiday. Man, this is pretty quiet, except for at nighttime when everybody starts to set off their bombs. When I was a kid, they were firecrackers. Now they're fucking bombs. Sound like Beirut. But anyway, today's video is basically to, I guess, roll out the bass sessions, because as you guys know, I recently did the acoustic sessions and it was well received, and I thank you guys. So I decided, because it's been a while since I've really done a lot of bass stuff for the bass subscribers and the beginners, so I thought it'd be something interesting to do. So I put together a pretty wide array of styles, not just one style. And what's different to me personally when I do my guitar covers versus my bass, the guitar covers are not really that difficult because it's pretty straightforward. And it's not a whole lot of what I call ad-libbing and fills, because as a bass player, and one of my all-time favorite bass players is a guy probably most people never heard of, Kurt Cokley. He was in a group in the late 70s called T-Connection. I think they were from Nasta, Jamaica. And his brother was the lead singer and leader of the band. His name was, I forgot his first name. But the bass player name was Kurt Cokley. And what I loved about his bass playing is there's some people that just have a natural knack to give you just enough, not too much. Because drummers are guilty for this. There's just too much. It's like, hey, my name ain't on the marquee, so why am I all over the place? Musicians are the backdrop for the vocalist in most cases, unless again you're the leader. Like Lenny White, who was the drummer for Return to Forever. It was Lenny White. It was 29 featuring Lenny White. Lenny White's name was on the marquee, so it was like, yeah. But when you're just one of the members, you're supposed to kind of keep it back. It's like you're the backdrop. You're not the dude up front with the mic in his face. And there's some people that have a hard time making that distinction and making their adjustments. And Kurt Cokley, when he played bass, beautiful. He had these beautiful feels when they're needed. It was never it was never too much, And bass players are sometimes guilty for that too, adding too much. It's like just, another favorite bass player was Robert Bell, or is Robert Bell from Kool and the Gang. I listen to his bass lines, it's like just getting the job done. Not all this adding in between the main notes and, just so much of it, it just becomes just convoluted, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. But that's the difference between, for me, when I do bass guitar covers, pretty straightforward, unless you got a guitar player that's adding too much. And the bass covers are in that kind of category, as far as you got to select your covers, wisely, because when I listen to bass lines that are busy, I can do those, but I'm like, I don't want to spend 2 fucking hours figuring out all these extra little added notes in there and can't catch them all in the time that they fall, that they play out, because there's some artists, and I'm not gonna name any names because it's not nothing negative, but their bass players are just all over the place. It's just like after every main part of the phrase, they adding these extra. After every one, it just adds so much stuff, to the point where you can't cover it. Because when I do covers, I try to be as accurate as possible, and I don't want to overlook those or overplay or play over those fills, because that's not what he's doing at that time. So I'm like, I'm just going to leave that alone, but that's something that I think young bass players should be aware of out of the gate, and drummers, because again, usually those are the two that are really adding a whole lot of extra stuff, because the keyboard player really don't do that. Pretty straightforward what he does. But the bass players, some of them, and the drummers, all over the place. Just all over the place. But it's interesting, some of the bass players that I did covers on, and I've always, of course, knew that they were great musicians, but I didn't realize how great they were until you start to play their stuff. And one of them is the late Marvin Isley from the Isley Brothers. Beautiful bass lines and beautiful playing. Another one, of course, Verdell White of Earth, Wind and Fire. And the reason why I've always felt that way about him, but the reason why you know, he didn't make my top 10 bass players list. And there's only 10 people, and then you're always going to have somebody that's champion say, you left that dude out. But the reason why he wasn't on my list, and it wasn't because he's not a great or phenomenal player, because he is, it was the way that they mixed Earth, Wind, and Fire songs, where it was hard to hear all that great stuff that Verdell White was doing. You know, I can't think of not one song that the bass line carried in an Earth, Wind, and Fire song, with the exception of Let's Groove Tonight, which was a synthesized bass, and it was written by a guy that wasn't a member of Earth, Wind, and Fire. So that's why, unfortunately, you know, a lot of people kind of, I won't say overlook, but just really don't give him enough credit because of the way that those Earth, Wind, and Fire songs were mixed, that he was really under there. It was really hard to hear all that beautiful stuff he was doing. And his tone, you know, he had a beautiful tone, or have a beautiful tone. But, you know, there are a lot of bass players that just didn't get their due. And there's some that, you know, they overexposed, the Victor Wootens, you know, and name a list of others. But not taking away from Victor Wooten, because Victor Wooten's a bad mother, you know. But it's like, we know this already. Same thing when people used to ask me, why aren't you doing Hendrix? Why do I need to? There's a million other people on YouTube doing Hendrix. You know, he don't need any more accolades or props. We know that Hendrix is one of the greatest players that ever walked the planet Earth, you know? So it's like, that's a no-brainer. How about showcasing some of these guys that are extremely good but just never got their due, like a Kurt Coakley? You know, just about every T-Connection song, especially their ballads, beautiful bass lines and beautiful feels, and they're placed in their place where they should be, you know. But again, next week is the bass sessions, where I do a lot of you know, bass covers. So I hope, or sure that, you know, it's going to be where we see, you know, because again, like I said, I haven't forgotten the bass players. Just that sometimes when you do bass covers, you got to be more selective than guitar covers, because again, you're running to certain you know, bass lines, so they're just extra busy, you know. Because someone asked me a while back, what do you think about 5, 6, 7, 8 bass strings guitars? And I'm like, once you pass the 4th string playing bass, anything after that is, you're a guitar player. You know, because now if you notice versus in the 70s, 50s, 40s, 80s, that the bass player traditional role back then was just holding down the foundation, playing a pattern or walking, and that was it. There was none of this. Every now and then, of course, there's spotlight, you know, a certain couple of bars for the bass player to do his thing, like in a lot of James Brown tunes. But now the bass player has come from behind that format, and now he's competing with the guitar player. You know, he's sitting there playing and soloing, and it's like, well, who's holding down the bass line if now you doing all this? You know, but nothing stays the same. You know, everything changes. I'm not knocking what I just said. It's different. You know, it's just different. Because, again, had people ask me, well, what do you think of that? I'm like, I'm sticking with 4 strings. I mean, because everything that I play is basically 4 strings. Because I heard about drop tuning and, you know, lowering the E to E flat. And, you know, you got 5 strings, and the second strings is a different note, tuned and different. I'm like, I'm not trying to make nothing complicated. It's real simple to me. If you're an artist, you want to write stuff that people can play without a problem, okay? Guys in the garage, in the basement, can play your stuff and not trying to figure out what tuning they need to be in and all that nonsense. But, you know, there's some people that don't think that far out ahead of time as far as, okay, that makes sense, Morris, man. I mean, you know, I put a song out there and everybody in the clubs, the band, the cover bands are playing it. The young guys that are trying to play instruments are playing it, of course. Instead of this extremely difficult composition that is very hard for even professionals to play that you did, you know. But everybody thinks different. That's how I think. Simplicity, my brother. Okay, make it simple. Don't make it difficult. You know, some of the greatest songs were just 3-chord songs. Just My Imagination is actually 3 chords, and then there's one chord, note in the bridge. And it's a simple song, just 3 chords. You know, it's about the arrangement. It ain't so much about the composition or the chords. It's the arrangement. You know, that's the bottom line. But I'm going to sign off now. Just thought I would post this video. Again, the bass sessions are coming Monday. I think you're going to like it. Till next time, take care. Thanks for watching.